I sometimes have the rare opportunity to speak with a special guest that can address both human health and planetary health in one conversation, which is what this podcast, People and Planet, is all about. Dr. Jenny Goodman was a traditionally trained medical doctor, but was disillusioned with conventional medicine's inability to heal sick people and its failure to inquire about the root causes of illnesses. So she ventured into a field of medical practice called Ecological Medicine, which is an integrative and comprehensive root cause approach to health and also addresses the interactions between an individual and their environment. This is a fascinating conversation with a lot to learn. Please get your notepads and pens ready to take notes. I hope you enjoy it. Dr. Jenny, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have a guest like you that can touch on topics related to human health and planetary health, which is essentially what this podcast, People and Planet, are all about. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Alia.
So Dr. Jenny, I know you're clinically and traditionally trained as a medical doctor, as an MD, but you're now practicing ecological medicine. Can you share with us what that is and what compelled you to get into this field?
Okay, well, I'll start first with what compelled me to get into it, and then I'll explain what ecological medicine is. So, I went to medical school, a naive, idealistic young woman in 1976, wanting to heal the sick, because that's what I thought medicine was about. Wanting also to learn about the root causes of illness and how we could, by understanding the causes, do some prevention, keep people healthy. Fast forward 6 years, that's not what they teach you in medical school. I spent many years in the wilderness, not knowing what kind of medicine to practice, how to do it in a way that felt right and ethical. I knew something was profoundly wrong with what I'd been taught, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I knew something vital was missing from what I'd been taught. And I really didn't find out what that was until I discovered the British Society for Ecological Medicine in the late 1990s. Now, the British Society for Ecological Medicine, bsem.org.uk, is a wonderful group of disillusioned doctors, been going for 40 years, who have always been asking the same questions I was asking as a junior doctor. Like, well, why has this happened? And what can we do about it? And how can we make the person better without also making them worse in other ways? And this wonderful group of doctors, and now other practitioners as well, naturopaths, nutritionists and so on, have found answers to those questions, which were my questions. So they use nutrition and they use environmental medicine. I'll explain what that is. But essentially, nutritional medicine is putting the good stuff back in. And in the context of farming, we will talk about why the good stuff is missing, the vitamins, the minerals, and so on. And environmental medicine is looking at the toxins that we've produced in the environment since the Industrial Revolution, which get into our bodies in many different ways, how we can identify them, how we can detox them, get them out, and how we can make sure that the person doesn't retox. So it was like coming home, because this was what I thought I was going to learn when I trained as a doctor all those years ago. Now, the reason that nutritional medicine and environmental medicine together are called ecological medicine is twofold. One is that we see the human body as an intrinsic part of the wider ecosystem that is planet Earth. We can in no sense be separate from it. And this is not just on a mystical spiritual level. This is on a very on-the-ground level of physics, chemistry and biology. We breathe the air, we drink the water, we eat the food that's grown in the earth. So whatever gets into the earth, the water and the air gets into us. And the good stuff that's missing from the soil fails to get into us. So, what goes around comes around. We are one with planet Earth in a very literal, scientific way, as well as in the more mystical ways that people are talking about these days. We are all one. Now, it's also called ecological medicine for another reason, which is it is systems thinking, and it sees the whole human body as one joined up ecosystem. So, what happens in my gut affects my lungs, affects my skin, affects my joints, and so on. And this is where it differs so fundamentally from conventional modern medicine, even though it's based on the identical science. Because if you go to your GP now with pains in your joints and a terrible rash on your body and difficulty breathing, you will simply be referred respectively to the rheumatologist, the dermatologist, and the respiratory doctor. And those three people will never sit in a room together. They will never have a conversation about what could be causing these three different sets of symptoms in this person. And of course, from the patient's point of view, it's one body. And from an ecological medicine point of view, it is the expression in three different body systems of an underlying problem that may begin with a gut, may begin with nutritional deficiencies, may begin with environmental toxicity, probably begins with all three. But we are detectives and we unravel what's going on. So, you don't have to see three different ecological physicians if you've got three different things wrong. We are precisely about pulling it together within the body and between the body and the planet.
What's the difference between ecological medicine, that seems like a very integrative way to practice medicine, and functional medicine?
I don't really think there is a difference. I think functional medicine is what they call it in the USA. Ecological medicine is basically the same, but it's been going longer. And in practice, if somebody wants to train in the UK, the British Society for Ecological Medicine is a charity. It's an educational charity. The Institute for Functional Medicine in the USA is a for-profit company. And until very recently, they did a 5-day training every October in this country. Very, very expensive, very intensive, I believe from 7 in the morning till 7 at night for 5 days. And what I know about that training is from the graduates of that training who have sat in with me, sat in on my consultations. And it's a superb training in terms of the science and in terms of the references. They have their finger on the pulse of all the research papers confirming that everything we do in nutritional and environmental medicine is grounded in scientific research. So very solid training in that way. What they haven't got is a way of linking their graduates up with experienced practitioners to sit in on their consultations. And to me, that's a crucial part of the training. When I discovered the BSEM and did their 2-year postgrad training, I was privileged to sit in with many very senior practitioners of this art. And that is how I learnt. And I think it's worth saying, none of the senior doctors whom I sat in with charged me for the privilege. And I have never charged any of the dozens and dozens of nutritional therapists, naturopaths, herbalists, junior doctors, other doctors, GPs who have sat in on my consultation, because it's part of the Hippocratic oath that you pass on the knowledge, you teach, and you teach for free.
I love everything you're sharing about this. I'm getting goosebumps just as you're talking. I really hope this is a growing field in medicine, because we need more doctors like you. We need more people really looking at a system as a whole, as an integrated system, and that we are absolutely part of nature. And I know allopathic or conventional medicine is really about medicating a symptom and not looking at a root cause. And also, as you said, that it works in silos. You're not feeling well in the mind, you see a brain doctor. You're not feeling well in the gut, you see a gastro. But no one's connecting the dots when it comes to nutrition or the body as a whole connected system. So I really appreciate that this is, I hope, a growing field in medicine. Could you please share?
Not only are they not connecting the dots, particularly between the gut and the brain, despite the vast amount of evidence there now is about the gut-brain axis, if you've got a mental health problem, you have huge difficulty getting them to take your physical problem seriously. I mean, yes, they're connected, but physical problems are also real and sometimes need a physical approach, whether it's herbs or acupuncture or whatever it is. And one of the problems people have is once they've admitted to depression or anxiety or anything that goes in the psychiatric box, then their dreadful gut pain isn't taken seriously. Their dreadful bone pain maybe isn't taken seriously. It's all written off as psychosomatic because conventional medicine likes to put people's symptoms in boxes.
You're right. There is so much information about the gut-brain axis. As a health coach, I'm advanced certified in gut health, so I'm very, very passionate about this subject myself. And they're starting to connect different types of bacterial species in the gut that are related to depression, anxiety, and even neurodegenerative diseases. So what happens in the gut doesn't stay in the gut, and vice versa. If we're very stressed in the mind, it can also create an inflammatory response in the body or in the gut.
Because the vagus nerve is a huge nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, And whatever's happening in the mind is going to affect that. It's a parasympathetic nerve. It enables us to rest and digest. And if you're super duper stressed, that side of the system is not going to work. Having said that there is some denial of this in conventional medicine, it is actually filtering through. It filters through and gets co-opted. So, for example, I can give you an example. 10 or 11 years ago, I remember writing to a patient's gastroenterologist and saying, look, I've done a stool test on this patient who's got very severe kind of Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, serious inflammatory bowel disorder, not IBS. And I have found all these really abnormal, rare, horrible fungi and bacteria and a complete absence of the friendly bifido, lactobacteria and so on. And I'm going to work on this person's microbiome, partly by their diet, partly by herbs, partly by probiotics. Well, the result was so disdainful. He didn't write back, they never do. But the response mediated via the patient, who was quite upset by the response, was, quote, this is a gastroenterologist 10 years ago. This business about the microbiome is complete and utter nonsense, and the gut bacteria are irrelevant to disease, and what you eat makes no difference to the function of your gut. I mean, it's patently mad, but that was 10 years ago. And you wouldn't get a gastroenterologist saying that today. Because of the work of Professor Tim Spector and others, it's all gone mainstream. They know about gut health, they know about the microbiome, but it's like they always knew. And I shouldn't care about this, but it's hard not to. No credit is given to the ecological health movement, which has been talking about the fact that death begins in the colon and what happens in the gut matters for best part of 100 years. Like the society's been going 40 years, but the ideas about what the gut does to the rest of the body and to the brain are at least 100 years old and probably thousands of years old.
And I've come across a lot of doctors, either in my friend group or because I read books that doctors have written, and especially gastroenterologists who don't study nutrition. For me, that is one of the most shocking things.
It is extraordinary.
It's extraordinary.
And when they do, I mean, nutrition is on the medical curriculum in an utterly token way, as it was in my day 50 years ago, like a couple of hours in 6 years. But even what they do teach is wrong. And specifically what's wrong is the ludicrous idea of the nutrient reference values or recommended daily allowance. So the amount of B12 that they say is what you need is enough to stop you dying of pernicious anemia, but it's not enough to give you maximal cognitive function. And the amount of vitamin D they say you need is the amount to stop you getting rickets or osteomalacia, but it's not enough for your immune system to work and your brain to work. And, you know, similarly with many others, with vitamin C, their recommended daily amount is enough to stop you dying of scurvy, but not enough for you to fight off all the colds and viruses and flus that are around. So what there is a spectrum of health from actually being dead to being in vibrant, optimal health. And the amount of nutrients you need determines where you are on that spectrum. And we are interested in using nutrients to move you along the spectrum from just surviving to really thriving. But then you get NHS doctors saying, oh, you've got far too high a level of vitamin B12 because their normal ranges, their numbers, are based on this 100-year-old science when they had just discovered the deficiency diseases that people were dying of. So it's extraordinary that that is still what the government bases its recommended daily allowances on.
It's not based on optimal health, and I get this a lot in the Middle East as well. I don't practice medicine, so I can't prescribe a blood test, but my clients will send me bloods, and I'll take a look at their tests and just help them maybe understand it or talk to their doctor in a different way. And the range, for example, for vitamin D is like 70 to 200 or 70 to 150. That's the range. And my client will come to me at 72, and the doctor won't flag it. And
I would say it's fine.
Because it's within range, but I would say if the range is 70 to 200, don't you want to be smack in the middle at 100? Why do you want to stay low on 72? So these are things I have to educate my clients on. And you're absolutely right. The range is so skewed and probably outdated.
And in fact, that even that range is too low. And my colleague, Dr. Sarah Myhill, points out that, you know, we all evolved running naked under the African sun. If you do that, you have a vitamin D of about 500.
There you go.
You know, and 10,000 IU is considered a very high dose to take. But that's what you get if you expose your arms and legs to an hour of good sunshine. And of course, it's much better to make it from sunshine than to take it as a supplement. But hey, we live in the Northern Hemisphere.
So as an ecological doctor or someone who practices ecological medicine, did you have to go back to school and like double your amount of studies because now you needed to study nutrition and gut and joints and inflammation? Or was it, because I can only imagine if you already had a background in being a medical doctor and had to do all that studying, to now integrate it all together and have all these different specialties. How long did that, like, what did that look like?
But it was an intensive 2-year program, but also I'd been reading a lot about nutrition before that. I knew a lot about nutrition. What I didn't know is that it could be used as a form of medicine in itself, even though Hippocrates said so. And what I had to do was really interesting. I had to go back to my biochemistry, which is what they teach you in year 1 of medical school. And at the end of that year, I liked biochemistry. I was reasonably good at it. And I asked one of the lecturers, what is the purpose of the biochemistry? What's its clinical application going to be when we get into the clinical hands-on part of the course? And he said, oh, you won't need it. It's just for looking at rare metabolic and genetic diseases. So unless you go into genetics, you won't ever need it again. Foolishly, I believed him. And I gave my biochemistry textbook away. Fast forward many years, and I'm doing the BSEM's training, and what I need is that biochemistry in all the depth that I had done it like 20 years previously, and more. So I went out and bought new biochemistry textbooks, but there's no textbook like the original one. So yeah, I had to learn a lot of revision of the biochemistry. And the cell biology, that again was just like first year basic stuff. We never used it in clinical practice. What is a cell? How does it work? What is the Golgi apparatus? What are the ribosomes? And most of all, what is a mitochondrium? What are the mitochondria? The energy producing organelles within every cell. So I knew roughly what they did and how they worked, but I didn't know how they were impacted by environmental toxins, by nutritional deficiencies, how many disease mitochondrial dysfunction is implicated in. And I also didn't know that muscle cells, heart cells, and brain cells have much higher concentration of mitochondria in them than other cells of the body, which again has huge implications for things like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, heart disease. So I had the basics there, but I hadn't been taught how to apply it.
Can you share with us how environmental toxins do contribute to mitochondria dysfunction? And for those listening, your mitochondria are the energy-producing organelles within your cell. But hopefully Dr. Jenny will expand on that a little bit to give you a better understanding, and then how all these diseases are coming through by being exposed to toxins.
Basically, the mitochondria manufacture energy in the form of a molecule called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And the process is biochemically very, very complicated, but it involves what's called an electron chain, the transfer of electrons from one atom or molecule to another. So firstly, that is impacted by an electromagnetic radiation. Our bodies are electrical organs, and the electromagnetic radiation that's coming out of your Wi-Fi router, your mobile phone, your Bluetooth device, the ridiculous thing some people are wearing on their wrist to find out how many steps they do a day, and your mobile phone itself. All of these are giving out electromagnetic radiation, which disrupts the mitochondria. It also disrupts what are called the voltage-gated calcium channels, which prevent calcium getting into the cell unless a tiny bit has to get in for a special reason. The electromagnetic radiation forces that wide open. Calcium floods into the cell, including into the mitochondria, and virtually every disease you can think of is contributed to by that. But back to the mitochondria, right? Because they're producing energy so intensively, there are bound to be waste products as a result of that process. And the waste products are what we call reactive oxygen species, right? And if they're not cleared away instantly, you get oxidative stress. And what's meant to clear them away are antioxidants. Now, you get antioxidants from fresh raw fruit and vegetables, from organic vegetable juicing, from vitamin C, vitamin E, selenium, zinc, all the good stuff. So we should have enough antioxidants on board to instantly mop up the waste products produced by our own energy production. But if you have got lots of environmental toxins in your system, they clog up the works and the waste products from the mitochondria don't get cleared. And there's a particular enzyme called SOD, superoxide dismutase, right? I knew it would come to me. Superoxide dismutase, it gets rid of superoxide, which is one of the waste products of mitochondrial metabolism. It doesn't work unless it's got a good level of zinc, copper and manganese. Now, you might be low in those because of nutritional deficiency, but if you've encountered heavy metals from your toxic environment, those heavy metals like lead, mercury, cadmium, nickel, aluminium, they will push out the good minerals. So that's one of the many ways that environmental pollution impacts on the mitochondria. Let me just go back to our previous conversation and give you a very, very brief few billion year history of the mitochondria themselves. Because way, way back, billions of years ago, the mitochondria were bacteria. They were bacteria living in us, in our cells, symbiotically. And if you look at them under a microscope, they still look like bacteria. Why does that matter? Because antibiotics, which have a huge impact on bacteria, may also have that huge impact on mitochondria. So I'm just completing the previous thought, really, about what damages mitochondria. Antibiotics knock out people's energy by damaging the mitochondria. And it's not only if you've had a prescription of them from your GP. If you are eating meat or dairy or eggs from non-organically farmed, non-regeneratively farmed animals, because those animals live in such cruel and stressful and unnatural environments and can't run around freely on the grass, they're cramped, they're tortured, their stress levels will be so high that that will have a huge impact on their immune system. Therefore, the intensive farmers give them daily low-dose antibiotics. This is routine. It's low dose, but it's cumulative. It's bad for the animals and it's bad for us because when we eat those animals, we're eating a low dose of antibiotics every day. And if you don't, which is creating resistant bacteria as well as damaging the mitochondria, if you don't filter your water, you're also drinking the antibiotics, the residues of the antibiotics that are peed out onto the water table by all those non-organically farmed animals, and by everybody's pets who may be on antibiotics, and by your next door neighbours, because we all pee, it ends up in the water table. So any drugs that any person or animal is on, antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, anti-epileptics, antihypertensives, that's drugs to lower the blood pressure, antidepressants, chemotherapy, whatever it is, if you're not fitting a water filter, which please do, then you are drinking tiny amounts of those every day.
Can you maybe give us a historical overview of why you have so much concern over human health and planetary health?
So this is very important. And I do occasionally ask when I do a live talk, please put your hand up if you know or have ever known a person with cancer. And every hand in the room goes up. And I just clutch my heart because it's so painful. Now, it is not the case that 100 years ago cancer didn't exist. Cancer has been known for thousands and thousands of years, but it's been known as a very rare illness. Similarly with heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, autoimmune conditions, autism, asthma, these things were all known. They've always existed, but they were very, very rare. And what's happening now is they are all at endemic, dare I say, pandemic proportions. I mean, in the UK, we've got 3 million with diabetes, 1 million with Alzheimer's. That's just those with the diagnosis. And we're told that 1 in 2 of us will get cancer. Now, this is worrying, desperately worrying in itself. But it's also worrying in 2 other ways. It's being normalized. And I worry about that. What do we do when we know someone with cancer? We run a marathon, we raise money. We wear a coloured ribbon, and we get a warm glow of smug satisfaction. We raise loads of money, but we're raising money for charities that are giving the money to pharmaceutical firms to do the research for the magic bullet drug that's going to cure it that never, ever appears. And in fact, we know the causes of these diseases becoming epidemic in their proportions. That's what my second book is about. Getting healthy in toxic times, an ecological doctor's prescription for healing your body and the planet. I have to tell you, my chosen title for it was What's Got Into You? How pollution is making us sick and what we can do about it. Right? And what I discovered in researching the book was that there are tens of thousands of papers published in peer-reviewed journals, PACA medical journals, showing without a shadow of a doubt that the pesticides, insecticides, herbicides and so on, the heavy metals, the toxins, the plastics particularly, all these petrochemical products are very definitely linked with all the diseases I've just mentioned and with neurodegenerative diseases, which includes Alzheimer's, but also includes Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, which is neurodegenerative and autoimmune, motor neuron disease, and so on. Now, that's not surprising. We know the heavy metals are neurotoxins, and we know that pesticides and so on were originally developed as nerve gases, weapons of war. So, of course, they destroy the nervous system. But conventional medicine is not taking any notice of the fact that there are these epidemics or of the fact that we know the causes of them. And at this point, medics have to come out not just of their silos in terms of their different departments, but their silos as medicine, because this involves, the whole atmosphere, the whole planet. It's got to be linked up with transport, with education, with environmental measures, and with regulation of industries. Because, we know the petrochemical industry is wrecking the planet. And, plenty of environmental campaigners know that it's poisoning the bees and the bears and the badgers. And there are campaigns to save the bears, save the bees, save the badgers. There's no campaign to save the humans. It's like we imagine the NHS, God bless, will take care of that. But all it can do is pick up the pieces. So I'm here to say, don't panic, because even though this stuff is scary, if we know it, we can do something about it. And if we put our heads in the sand like an ostrich, which is very tempting, then we can't do anything about it. There are loads of ways we can protect ourselves from environmental toxins if we know the sources. And there are loads of ways we can detox ourselves. And the very first prevention against any form of toxicity is tip-top nutrition. Because nutrients are antitoxins, just like toxins are anti-nutrients. Many, many toxic substances, including the heavy metals, do their damage by pushing the good minerals out of the body. And if we have superb levels of the good minerals, then the toxic stuff doesn't have such easy access to our cells. I've probably gone way off topic. What was your original question?
Well, I want to ask you if there's hope, and it sounds like you do believe that there's hope, that there is a way to detox the body, that there is a way to take care of ourselves, and if there's enough action, both grassroots action from civil society, but also from the government, we can actually make a change to this ecological crisis that we have. Why do you think farming is such a powerful tool in combating or mitigating human chronic illnesses and diseases and our ecological crisis?
Yes. Farming is absolutely fundamental. I don't think of it as a tool. I think of it as an absolutely fundamental and vital human activity. We've been doing it for 10,000 years. Before that, we were hunting and gathering, fishing and foraging. And the farmers are the custodians of the soil. And modern agricultural practices have caused not only depletion of the nutrients of the soil by intensive over-farming, damage by the synthetic fertilizers that they use to replace the nutrients. And these synthetic fertilizers contain basically nitrogen and phosphorus, which I've never found to be deficient in a patient. What I find to be deficient are the nutrients that are missing from the soil: the magnesium, the calcium, the zinc, selenium, iodine, chromium, manganese, and so on. And good farmers, organic regenerative farmers, are turning that around. They're fertilizing the soil with compost, mulch, vegetable matter, with animal manure, which is absolutely essential. And as David Attenborough said, if grasslands are to be vibrant and varied, they have to be grazed. So the animals are eating food, they're eating the grass, they're pooing on it to improve the fertility. And with mob grazing, which is the best way of doing it, the animals are moved on every day. So they don't eat a patch bare. They fertilize it enough, they crop it enough, and they leave enough of it there, then they're moved on, which mimics what the wild cattle, the ancestors of our domesticated cattle, would have done. They'd have moved on to new pastures. That's good for the earth, good for the farmer, good for the people. So if we are eating food from farmers who farm like that, we're eating healthy food. We're supporting the organic farmers who are giving us the healthy food. This is where consumer power comes in. To eat from your local organic farm, to buy at the farm gate and not go to the supermarket, or get an organic veg box delivered from a company like Riverford. What organic farmers also do is they're managing completely without pesticides by using companion planting. Like, so if you've got 3 different crops growing together, which I have seen in practice, peas, oats and wheat, something like that, you can harvest them all together, separate them afterwards. You let few weeds grow at a lower level and it doesn't cause a problem. So you don't need glyphosate, you don't need toxic herbicides. What you need is biodiversity. And the biodiversity is amazing. It's just what nature does. Nature doesn't do monocrops, right? So each plant protects the other and the really nasty pests can't get a foothold. Whereas if you do monocrop farming, so a giant field of nothing but wheat, or oilseed rape, which is a complete plague, any pest that likes to feed on that particular crop will say, hey, it's Christmas, let's go. And it'll invite all its friends and relatives. The crop will get eaten up, so they'll have to spray pesticides. Then the bugs will get resistant, just like our bugs do to antibiotics, and then you use a heavier pesticide. And the intervention cascade is destroying our green and pleasant land and poisoning our children. And it's totally unnecessary. More and more farmers are converting to regenerative and organic methods. Economically, it's hard for them to do so. The government doesn't support them, which is awful. It supports the mega farms and the monocrop fields. But we can support them by boycotting the battery chickens and the battery eggs, and boycotting the glyphosate-infested lettuce and the cruelty-infested chicken, and buying organically, which is always humanely, produced produce. And so, they manage without the chemicals and they need our support. I've spoken at farming conferences like the Oxford Real Farming Conference and Land Alive and Groundswell. And there's a huge surge of farmers wanting to do it right by the planet and by the people. And they need our support. And I say to them, absolutely truthfully, if you can go organic, you are saving lives, and you're saving more lives than doctors ever will. Because once we stop eating the pesticides, which you're eating if you're eating non-organic food, once we stop eating them, our nervous systems can recover. And if they're already in our systems, there are at least 7 ways we can detoxify them. Those 7 methods of detox are in my first book, Staying Alive in Toxic Times. Subtitle is A Seasonal Guide to Lifelong Health, because, of course, it's all about living with the seasons and doing what our evolution evolved us to do, getting up when it's light, going to bed when it's dark, eating what's in season and what's local where possible, although that's difficult this far north. So the first detox method is organic vegetable juicing. Obviously organic, you don't want to be juicing pesticides. And, if you need to detox, I do mean juicing, not making a vegetable smoothie. Because a smoothie is great, but it's just the vegetables crushed up. And we have so many problems now that we actually need to use these juices as medicine, right? This is not as food, this is medicine. So the wonderful phytonutrients and antioxidants and polyphenols and anthocyanidins, all these wonderful nutrients that are in the plants, we need them concentrated. So we need to juice our lettuce and rocket and parsley and celery, a little bit of carrot and beetroot, not too much. You don't want a sugar hit, and no fruit. Eat fruit, but don't juice it. And there are recipes for vegetable juicing in my book. And if you do that, once or twice a week, you're doing your body a huge favor. People who are actually recovering from cancer are doing it 5 or 6 times a day. And that's an example of the spectrum between prevention and cure. You have to do really extreme things if you're using an alternative approach to heal cancer. But if you're not, and you're just doing prevention, do some vegetable juicing, ideally once a day, but even twice a week makes a big difference. And the fibre that is not going into your juice is not wasted. It's brilliant compost. Put it on your garden. So that's my number one method, is vegetable juicing. My number two method is saunas. Saunas done in a very particular way. If you can't take the heat, you can use infrared saunas, but actually getting the molecules of the toxins out, ordinary saunas. But the thing is, take a clean towel in with you and wipe the sweat off. As soon as you break a sweat, wipe it off, because the body doesn't know you're sweating to detox. The body thinks you're sweating to cool down. And therefore, any toxins, and remember, all these petrochemical toxins are lipophilic. They dissolve in fat, not water. We can't pee them out. They're in the fatty layer just under the skin and deeper in the body. But if you start detoxing the layer under the skin, it will come out in the sweat only for the first 5 or 10 minutes. Longer than that becomes counterproductive. You lose the good minerals. So wipe the sweat off for 10 minutes, drop the towel in the laundry, go and have a shower. If you can do that 2 or 3 times a week, that's great. If you can do it twice a month, that's good too, depending on what your life is like. Method 3 is colonic hydrotherapy. Not for everyone, not for anyone under 18, but an immensely good way of cleansing the colon and therefore cleansing the blood supply that goes to the liver. Because the liver doesn't get its whole blood supply from the hepatic artery from the heart. It gets a lot of it from the gut via the hepatic portal vein. And some of that goes from the colon. And if the colon's got old caked gunk on the inside, on the lining, and isn't moving freely and is toxic, then that's going to go to the liver. The liver's going to have to detox that as well as all the environmental toxins. And it may not have spare capacity, especially in women, in whom the liver spends about a third of its capacity just detoxing our own estrogen. Because, of course, our liver's detox enzymes were evolved to really detox our own hormones when they'd done their job in the body and deal with the occasional, snake venom or, scorpion bite or stinging nettle, poison ivy, whatever. They were not evolved to deal with the kind of petrochemicals we've been encountering for the last 100 or 200 years. And some people, by pure genetic chance, can detox those industrial toxins much better than others. And these genetic differences would have had no effect on our health before the Industrial Revolution. Now, they make the difference between someone who's fit and healthy, even living in a polluted city, and someone who's hiding in their home with multiple chemical sensitivity because they'll collapse if they smell your perfume on the tube. So, colonic hydrotherapy does the liver a huge favour. And I'm actually not in favour of these so-called liver cleanses where people drink gallons of olive oil and lemon juice and they say, oh, look, I've passed all these stones. But when you analyse the stones, they're just olive oil and lemon juice. You cannot cleanse the liver directly, but you can take milk thistle, which is a herb that helps it. You can do your vegetable juicing, which cleanses it, and you can cleanse your colon, which indirectly cleanses the liver. So my fourth method of detox is Epsom salts baths. And this may be familiar to you. It's not only for detox, it's for muscle relaxation. Because Epsom salts are magnesium sulfate. The magnesium goes in through the skin. It calms down autistic kids. It helps with arthritis. It raises the blood level of magnesium, which will lower the blood pressure. And the sulfate helps with the estrogen detox pathway. And you do that in the bathroom without the bathroom light on. Light a candle, chuck some lavender oil in the water as well, play some music. Do that before bed, and your kids with autism and ADHD will have a much better night's sleep. And it's also a detox. So those are my 4 major methods. There are 3 others. One is vitamin C, used in a very specific way, particularly to get rid of the heavy metals. And you increase the dose by 500 milligrams a day, very gradually. And some people can go up to 20, 30 grams a day before they get the runs, and others it's much lower. So you find your personal maximum, go back to the day before, and you do that for a few months, along with others, which I'll tell you in a second. You will get the heavy metals out of your system. The 6th thing is simply sprouting seeds on your window ledge so you can grow your own organic salad. If you're short of a mineral like zinc, then put some zinc in the water, filtered water, with which you're watering your seedlings. The plant will absorb the minerals for you, and you'll then be consuming it in a much more natural, absorbable form. Finally, there are specific nutrients that help detox specific toxins. So vitamin C is good for everything. The B vitamins, including B6, B12 and folate, are crucial for methylation. They all work together as a team. So you want a B complex plus methyl B12. Those are crucial for methylation, which is crucial for every form of detoxification and for protecting your DNA. But beyond that, if you've got aluminium toxicity, silica will take the aluminium out. There are 3 forms. Horsetail is a herb that's full of silica. There is acylous water. It's the word silica backwards, ACILIS, which Professor Chris Exley recommends. And there's a supplement from LLRG5 called Silicon Organique. It's a liquid, looks and tastes like water, 30 mils a day for a month. And I'm sure there are many other silica supplements as well. That's what I've used. Takes aluminium out, and we are exposed to aluminium from so many sources, from cookware to underarm deodorant to wrapping food in foil. Now, you can wrap your sandwiches in aluminium foil, but if you're cooking salmon in the oven and you're putting lemon juice on it, don't wrap it in foil, because the acid means the aluminium metal will be absorbed into the food. And there are other sources as well. So if you're dealing with nickel toxicity, which is surprisingly common, especially in diabetics, then you need 3 things to get it out. Vitamin C, zinc, which displaces it, and methionine, which is an amino acid that grabs hold of it once the zinc has displaced it, chelates it, and takes it out of the body. Cadmium toxicity, if you've been a long-term cigarette smoker, is harder to deal with. Vitamin C and phosphatidylcholine and zinc will help, but in some of my patients that needed to be intravenous. Lead is much harder because it tends to hide in the bones, and there is a view that actually you better leave it in the bones. Calcium, vitamin C and other intravenous treatments will get it out, but it may be safer not to even try. And mercury, there are so many things that help get rid of mercury. If you've got it in your teeth as fillings, what I would do is 4 months making the nutrition absolutely tip-top, so you've got good levels of the zinc, selenium, sulfur, and so on that you'll need to deal with the detox. Then have the mercury fillings replaced only by a specialist dentist who is a member of the IAOMT, International Academy for Oral Medicine and Toxicology. These are dentists who know that mercury is toxic and who found ways of removing and replacing the fillings that doesn't release lots of mercury into your system, which conventional drilling would do. So 4 months of nutrition, have them removed by a specialist dentist, then 6 months of getting the mercury out of your system. And of course, you may have acquired the mercury from eating too much tuna as well, not just from your fillings. You may have got it from your mother's fillings, especially if you were the firstborn. So you can use vitamin C, zinc, selenium, sulfur, all the allium vegetables, that's onions, garlic, leeks, spring onions, and so on. And iodine is very helpful, and coriander and chlorella, loads of things, but your coriander must be organically grown. And here's why. Coriander is good at removing mercury from the body because it has an affinity for mercury. It grabs onto it. Well, if there's mercury in the soil in which it was grown, it will grab onto that too. So make sure it wasn't grown on the site of an old factory. Make sure it was organically grown, because I checked with the Soil Association, and before they certify a farm as organic, it has to have virtually no heavy metals in there, as well as no pesticide use for 10 years. So those are some of the things you can do. And everything I've said, if it sounds scary to you, read it in reverse, because what I've been doing is telling you where the toxins are. You can filter your water. You can eat organic. You can massively moderate your use of the mobile phone. And if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, let me tell you of one response that I had recently, quite a heartwarming response to this second book. It was from my husband's uncle Brian, who's 89, and he read it and he said, Jenny, fascinating stuff, but I don't understand how come I'm still alive.
I get that a lot. A lot of people tell me that.
And the reason he's still alive and going strong, he'll be 90 next month, is because we are very resilient. We are resilient. And if we do some things right, not even everything right, we can, resist and overcome and transcend these problems. So there's a lot of people getting ill, and they're getting ill mainly through ignorance. That's why I'm spreading the word of how to stay healthy. If you know someone with breast cancer, get them taking iodine, because everyone I've ever seen with breast cancer has desperately low iodine. And in Japan, they eat vast amounts of seaweed, which is full of iodine, and they don't get breast cancer. They call it white woman's disease. However, if they move to America, within a generation, their rate is as high as ours, because it's not genetic, it's not racial, it's environmental. It's what you do. Iodine, a good level of iodine, will also protect you from radioactive iodine. If there should be a leak from Sellafield or one of the nuclear power plants they're insisting on building, because if you've got a good pre-existing level of healthy iodine in your thyroid, breast tissue, prostate, stomach, every cell in the body needs iodine, then the radioactive iodine won't get into you. If you've got pre-existing low iodine, it will. So these are some of the things you can do.
It sounds like there's a lot that we can do. I mean, obviously, if there's a more chronic case, we probably should take your recommendations to a doctor and work with either someone like you or a functional doctor to have someone monitor us and dose us properly. But it sounds like if someone was sitting here and writing notes for everything you just said, it sounds like about 80% of what you said we can do on our own at home and with some supplements.
Yes, and there's an awful lot more you can do in your own home, which I'll come on to in a minute. Obviously, a lot of these are political campaigning issues, but there's a lot you can do individually. But you mentioned, I can't remember what it was you said before, made me think we need to talk about plastic, just briefly, because everybody knows now that plastic is choking the fish, it's choking the birds, it's choking the oceans, it's choking the whole planet. But not everybody knows that it's poisoning us directly, and that it's linked with what were previously rare brain tumours like neuroblastoma, that it's linked with cancer, it's linked with endocrine disruption and menstrual cycles going crazy, and it's linked with neurodegenerative disorders. None of this is surprising because plastic is a petrochemical, so it's going to do what the pesticides do, hugely implicated in breast cancer. But the good news is it is perfectly possible to get 90% of the plastic out of your life. Right, so you stop drinking water out of plastic bottles, stop that immediately, and you can get glass bottles, and you can get a little protective case to put them in. Now you can buy glass bottles with a padding already around them. Metal is okay, but glass is better. I wish they'd let kids take glass bottles into school. I've sometimes been refused entry to theatres and places because I had a glass bottle of water on me. However, you don't wrap things in cling film, and you go through your house room by room. Almost everything in there that's plastic can be replaced by something that's not plastic. And in chapter 3 of this book, which is the water chapter, you'll see why. In the water chapter, I go through all the ways in which you can replace everything plastic with something that's either wood or metal, or that it isn't needed at all. I want to tell your listeners about 2 really short, useful little books. One is called How to Give Up Plastic by Will McCallum of Greenpeace, and the other is called How to Save the World for Free by Natalie Fay. Okay, and these are really practical little books. If you get the plastic out of your life, you're saving the planet and you're saving yourself. Now, in your home, what I suggest in chapter 7 of the new book is you go through each room. And I think we should start in the bedroom, because you're asleep for about 8 hours out of 24 and you're on a mattress. What's in that mattress? What's coming out of that mattress? Because most commercial mattresses are full of most hideous concoction of artificial chemicals, and it's all going in through your skin at night, and you're inhaling it at night as well. So number 1, open the window. Number 2, do not panic, because if your mattress is more than 1 or 2 years old, it has finished the off-gassing process and it's no longer as toxic. But if you're buying a new mattress, this is my concern. If you're buying new, especially for your kids, but also for yourself, get an organic mattress And there are recommendations in the book of companies that do them. But there are more and more companies. It's easier to get an organic mattress than it was 10 years ago because people are waking up. So one of the chemicals that may be in your mattress that may also be in your sofa and carpets and all your soft furnishings, if they are made of synthetic material, is something called polybrominated biphenyls. Hear the word bromine in there. It's like chlorine and fluoride. It's a toxic halogen that pushes iodine out of the body. The polybrominated biphenyls and the polybrominated diethers are flame retardants, and they're used as flame retardants. By law, they have to be in there if your mattress or sofa or carpet is made of synthetic material, which I find fascinating. It's because those things are highly flammable. Of course they are. They're petrochemicals. They're made to burn. And if you buy natural material like wool or cotton or flax or linen, those do not have to be impregnated with flame retardants because they are naturally fire resistant, you know? It's like sheep have wool and they're naturally fire resistant. Cotton grows in the field. It's naturally fire resistant. So next time you replace your bed, think about that. In your wardrobe, if you've got moths in your clothes, the conventional moth repellents is a really, really toxic pesticide. And you can use lavender oil. This is a revelation, isn't it? Lavender oil works. You just, chuck some essential oil of lavender on your clothes. They'll smell nice, but the moths don't think it smells nice. They hate it and they go away or die. And green fibres of Totnes do a spray, even more powerful. It's a mixture of lavender oil and neem oil. The neem oil doesn't smell very nice, but the lavender oil to some extent masks it and gets rid of the moths. Let's leave the bedroom and go into the bathroom. What is in those bathroom cabinets? Because if it's full of aftershave and deodorant and perfume and moisturiser and makeup, all that stuff, you may have the petrochemical versions from the chemist or the supermarket. It's toxic. It goes right in through your skin. The skin is the largest organ of the body and it's an absorptive surface. So don't put anything on your skin that you wouldn't put in your mouth, which means you can use coconut oil or shea butter as a moisturiser. You can use washing as a deodorant. And all of these things have got safe, natural versions, herbal versions. They can all be replaced with harmless, organic versions. However, the law is very lax. The law about labelling something organic food is quite strict, but the law with personal care products is completely non-existent. You can label a shampoo as organic if it contains only 1% organic material. So what's the way around this? How do you know it's safe? 2 ways. The simplest way is just to look on the website of the Soil Association. They have health and beauty pages. Anything they list as safe is very safe because they're very strict. And they are part of a wider organisation called Cosmos, which is the international certification for safe organic cosmetics. So if you're going to the health food shop, take your magnifying glass, because even in the health food shop, there's some rubbish and there's some good stuff. If you see the Soil Association logo or the Cosmos logo, that is safe. You can put it on your skin, you can put it on your body. And of course, if you want perfume, just get natural essential oils, whether it's lavender, geranium, ylang ylang, jasmine, frankincense, lemongrass. These are what perfumes used to be, flower essences, before they were manufactured out of petrochemicals in a factory. And synthetic perfumes have got benzene. They've got loads and loads of really nasty things. The benzene is linked with leukemia, and not all the ingredients have to be listed either. So even the horrifying ingredients list doesn't tell you the whole story. And one of my patients said to me, well, I'm using these natural essential oils, and Dr. Goodman, they smell gorgeous, but they only last a couple of hours. And then they wear off. And yes, that's right, because they're natural substances. Their biochemistry is aligned with our biochemistry. We know how to break them down. So carry a little bottle about, put it on every 2 hours. But hey, what's wrong with just smelling like a human? If we wash regularly, and our sweat is the sweat of healthy outdoor physical activity, not the sweat of fear or the stale sweat from failing to wash, then we're going to smell okay. And I think we need to reclaim what it smells like to smell human. But yeah, if you want perfume, use natural essential oil. So much for the bathroom cabinets. If we go downstairs to the kitchen and I open the cupboard under the sink, there's all those hideous cleaning chemicals. Look carefully because they have the skull and crossbones on, which means what it has always meant. Now, the manufacturer's concern is, God forbid a child accidentally drank it. Well, it doesn't really happen. But my concern is not for that acute poisoning, but for the daily drip. We're using these toxic cleaning chemicals, the oven cleaners, the surface cleaners, and the hideously unnecessary and dangerous antibacterial sprays, which just destroy the microbiome. And so your kid's immune system can't get trained on the natural bacteria that should live in a kitchen. A kitchen is not a laboratory or an operating theatre. It shouldn't be sterile. So ditch the antibacterial stuff and the antibacterial wipes. You can replace all these cleaning things with bicarbonate of soda mixed with a little bit of water. Some people clean their windows with vinegar. I don't, because I don't like my house to smell like a chippy. And there are natural, safe herbal cleaning products as well. Look and see what the Soil Association recommends. Suma is a very good make. For the cosmetics, Urtocram is a very good make. Green people, get toothpaste without detergent in it and without fluoride in it. We haven't had a chance to discuss that, but fluoride is being added to the water in many places. It does tremendous damage to bone, brain, ovary, kidney and thyroid. It is not a nutrient. It has no role in human metabolism. And if you want to keep children's teeth healthy, brush their teeth and keep them off the sugar. So that's the bathroom in brief. And the kitchen and the living room. Well, we've talked about the toxins that may be in mattresses. They may also be in the soft furnishings. So that means that if you go through your home and also ideally replace your Wi-Fi with hardwired Ethernet cables, certainly don't have Wi-Fi or an intercom in your child's bedroom. Turn it all off at night. Don't have a mobile phone near your head. Put it on flight mode. Put it in a Faraday bag. In chapter 6 of this book, I describe loads of methods to use your mobile phone more safely. Right? Just don't put it touching your head, but have it at a distance on speakerphone or use texting. You can protect yourself from your laptop. There are mats you can get. And I do list the companies who provide those products, the ones that I rate at time of writing. Okay, so you can use that technology safely, but go through your home and think what you could do differently. I am speaking to you now from my office with perfect broadband and no Wi-Fi whatsoever. It's just hardwired Ethernet cables. You can do that. There's a little bit of spaghetti, but hey, there's plenty of evidence that holding mobile phones or Wi-Fi routers even too near your head for too long is implicated in brain tumours, especially among young men. In 1979, I was on my neurology rotation, and medical students were called to Chapel Allerton Hospital in Leeds from all across the city. Whatever rotation they were doing, I happened to be doing neurology, but even if you weren't, you were called to see this rarity, this man with a brain tumour. And the consultant was very excited and saying, take note, because you will never see this again in your entire career. And it just chokes me up when I remember this because, I wish he'd been right. But now we all know someone who's had a brain tumour. And, there are people who survive, but not that many. And 99% of it is due, a lot of it is due to plastic poisoning, but most of it is due to holding the mobile phone next to the ear. So there are safer ways to use your mobile technology. You do not have to be cut off from friends, family and colleagues. You can still use your laptop, still use your phone, but there are safer ways to do it. So all of that is within your control. And we still need to campaign for a cleaner, safer planet.
And everything you've discussed isn't just about physical health like brain tumors and cancer. I mean, you alluded to endocrine issues. I have a lot of female clients and female listeners who have either infertility or fertility problems or menstrual issues. So I want them to hear that, there's a lot in their control and in their power. But it's beyond that as well. It's also mental and emotional well-being. So much of us, I think the levels are increasing as the decades roll out, are dealing with some kind of mental or cognitive functioning issue. or emotional issue. And a lot of it is because our food is so devoid of nutrients, or our gut microbiome is disrupted and there's a dysbiosis, or there's so much toxicity, or there's a blood sugar roller coaster, or just like radiation, like you say.
All of the above.
Or all of the above. And
so our job is to reduce the total load. And the last thing I want to do is to add to anybody's mental stress. So I will say, and this is very important, you do not have to get it perfect. You do not have to get your lifestyle or your diet perfect or your home perfect. You just have to get it a bit better than it is. Because if you do 80% of what I've said, you will make a huge difference, right? You don't have to do 90% and you don't have to do 100%. It's not possible, right? So just know that everything you do will make a difference. And one tiny change per week or one small change per month is enough. It's overwhelming if you try to change everything at once. But if you pick your way through it and make one change at a time, it becomes manageable and you feel empowered because you can take back control over your own health. Related to your question about mental health, or really the epidemic of mental ill health among young people especially, I think obviously we mustn't ignore the social causes. There are huge stresses and pressures on young people, making them go crazy, really. I mean, the ecological anxiety, the economic anxiety, the social media madness, the pressures of advertising on young women, as well as particular historical trauma that they may have. All those psychological inputs are important, but we cannot ignore the impact of pollution on mental health, because most of the pollutants are fat soluble, and so they will get into the brain. And we are, without wishing to be reductionist, we have to acknowledge that if the brain is damaged, the mind may be damaged as well. So if we can clear some of those pollutants out of the brain, we are going to be making one contribution to improving people's mental health. But I have to say, this is yet another epidemic, as is disability in the mental as well as physical sphere. I mean, when I was at primary school, there were no kids with asthma apart from myself, and there were no kids with special learning difficulties. You go into a classroom today, the classroom has a shelf for the children's asthma inhalers, and 1 in 5 kids has a learning disability, and there are special schools, special classes, loads of special teachers. It's a huge thing to have learning difficulties. And the parents of such children are, of course, rightly concerned to campaign for them to have extra help and extra provision. But I am equally concerned, why? Why are there so many kids who are really struggling and have special learning difficulties that honestly didn't exist when I was a kid?
You talk a lot about how some of these toxins and these chemicals are fat soluble. Would you then say that losing weight, like losing fat, especially for someone who's obese or overweight, I'm not talking about a healthy woman that has 20 to 25% body fat, would you say that that's healthy for them? It'll help them detox?
Well, it's the other way around. The fact that their fat is full of toxins makes it almost impossible to lose it. Because if you succeed in losing a bit of weight, and literally as you're burning up that fat, you're releasing the toxins into the bloodstream, which feels so dreadful, makes you feel so ill, that you immediately start stuffing the croissants again to put the fat back, to put, those things back in the fat. So in a strange way, the fat is holding those toxins, stopping them getting into the bloodstream, but the fat has also accumulated because of those toxins, not just to kind of protect the body from them, but because many of these toxins reset the hypothalamus in the brain. They reset the set point, the normal weight to which the body should adjust, and they make it much higher. And they also interfere with the balance between leptin and ghrelin, right? So in the hypothalamus, leptin is the hormone that makes you feel that you're full and you've had enough. And ghrelin is meant to be the one that's released to make you feel hungry. And the balance between those has been messed up. The receptors for the leptin no longer work. So people literally don't feel full however much they eat. They're not being greedy. The whole weight stability mechanism has been damaged by those pollutants. And what I found is, if someone comes with obesity or overweight, you detox them first. Forget about the fat initially. You detox the poisons out of their system slowly with saunas and everything else I've described. When the toxins are gone, it's much, much easier for them to lose weight. because as they lose it, they're not releasing toxins into the bloodstream that make them feel awful. So detox first, followed by weight loss, is what I have found works. And there's case history, a very brief case history of that as a kind of PS to somebody else's case history in chapter 1 of the new book.
That's so interesting. I want to ask you a question that Dr. Zach Bush has talked about in one of his lectures. I've seen him live. He's incredible. First, he talks about fertility and how he's so worried that we're about to go into the extinction of human race, because he's predicting that in 50 years, sperm count or sperm health is declining so rapidly that in 50 years, we will have infertility with men. But he also says something very interesting. He said, with all the toxic exposure that we have, especially glyphosate, he talks about glyphosate a lot, which is an herbicide. He says that we're actually damaging the future generations, and pregnant women that are exposed to glyphosate and other toxins are now damaging the developmental pathways of the fetus that are now leading to things like autoimmune conditions, autism, ADHD, and even gender dysmorphia. He was strongly suggesting this, and he explained the science, which I cannot, for the life of me, regurgitate right now. But he explained the science that the damage that happens in utero is leading to certain mental health conditions and certain physical health conditions. Have you come across the science, and would you agree?
I think Zach Bush is absolutely right about that. Everything you've just quoted him on, I'm afraid that is absolutely the case. But it is within our control to a large extent, right? The way to avoid glyphosate is A, to eat organic, and B, to find out whether your local council is spraying glyphosate on the grass verges and on the parks. And if it is, you get in touch with PAN, Pesticide Action Network, and they will come and support your local campaign. And they have already succeeded in stopping more than 50 local councils spraying the glyphosate around. So yes, you're right. The book to read about glyphosate is by Dr. Stephanie Seneff, Seneff for Freddie, Dr. Stephanie Seneff, and it's called Toxic Legacy. And she's absolutely right. She says what Zach Bush says, this is a toxic legacy for future generations. That is why, it was one of the reasons why, I have retired now from clinical practice, and your listeners need to know that, but there's a list on my website of many brilliant, fully accredited practitioners who are not all doctors. Some are nutritional therapists, naturopaths, herbalists, and so on. And what I specialised in was preconception care, right? And that wasn't a choice. It wasn't a decision. Just that's who kept coming. And preconception care is simply the principles of ecological medicine that I have described applied to the woman or the couple who want to, A, get pregnant if they've been suffering from infertility, B, hold a pregnancy if they've been suffering from miscarriage, and C, have a healthy baby, because an awful lot of unhealthy babies are being born. Zach Bush is right. And this is a problem. And it's not just about sperm count falling. It's about sperm quality. And if you've got lousy quality, poor quality sperm, and modern medicine circumvents that by using IVF and injecting the sperm effectively, well, if that's a sperm that couldn't make it to swim to the egg on its own, it's going to be a damaged sperm. And I have seen this again and again. And that's why I devote a large section of my first book, actually, to preconception care. I think it begins on page 148. This is so important that I remember it. At the very beginning of chapter 5 of Staying Alive in Toxic Times, because preconception care is the ultimate preventive medicine. And what I would do is, first of all, measure all the nutrient levels in both the man and the woman, measure all the toxin levels in the man and the woman, and do a sperm count. And quite often the sperm count looks pretty low to me and the quality looks pretty poor, but the NHS have said it's okay, it's borderline, it only takes one, which is a really nonsensical approach. But the really good news here is you can normalise the sperm count in 4 months. And 4 months is how long it takes the sperm to mature. Right? If you give the man the right nutrients, and the same applies to the woman, but the extent of male infertility is shocking. If you give the right nutrients, take him off the beer, take him off the cigarettes, and take him off any street drugs and ideally prescription drugs, and you detox thoroughly, and you clean up the gut, you clean up the diet, it's extraordinary. I've seen sperm counts go from extremely low to perfectly normal in just a few months. So you do this for both partners. The difficult bit is this. It takes best part of a year to get to the point where you can say, now you're ready to try. And if the woman's 42 and desperate, she's not going to wait that long. And the risk is that after a couple of months, she's detoxed to the point where she can now conceive, but not detoxed to the point where she can carry a pregnancy to term. And she risks another miscarriage, which is another bereavement. Okay. So I do try to get people to use barrier contraception in the first few months. And, you know, the egg will be a year older chronologically, but it will be 10 years younger biologically if you've got the toxins out of the system. So you can do a huge amount to make sure you've got a healthy baby if you know all this. And the last thing I would say is, do you know who's got the best and highest sperm count and quality in the world? Organic farmers.
Makes a lot of sense. They're not exposed to chemicals.
No.
Yeah, and they're eating well.
And they're outdoors, they're getting their vitamin D, and they're eating organic veg, yeah.
My last question is for women who are pregnant and are wanting to protect their fetus, and they're learning about all this now. They're listening to this interview. I know some of the detox protocols or tips that you advised us earlier on might not be safe for pregnant women. So are there just a couple of things you can share?
There are things you can and things you cannot do. You can't do a full detox program once you're pregnant because you don't want to detox into the placenta. Right. So you can definitely do vegetable juicing. I would not do saunas. I would not do Epsom salts baths. And I would definitely not do colonic hydrotherapy. You can take vitamin C, but not in the very high doses. You can certainly sprout salad leaves on your window ledge. So there's things you can do and things you can't do. You can take good, pure omega-3, that's fish oil. Nordic Naturals is my favorite brand because that's going to build the baby's brain. And it's also going to improve your brain because you know this whole thing about baby brain after you've had a baby and your cognitive function goes and your brain turns to mush. Patrick Holford was saying at a festival I spoke at only this weekend, The Wellness Way, when he was speaking, he pointed out that, of course, all the nutrients in the mother's body are taken for the baby. So if you haven't got a really high level of omega-3s, the baby will take yours and your brain will turn to mush in late pregnancy. And he was saying that is not inevitable. So the growing baby needs good levels of omega-3. I would say also good levels of the healthy omega-6, like evening primrose oil and so on. Good cold-pressed, extra virgin organic olive oil, avocados, nuts, seeds. Of course, you have to listen to your body if you're pregnant. If you get a strong aversion to something, you can't eat it. And if you get a craving for something, I would go for it. With the exception, if the craving is for sugar and sweet things, that's your body saying you're not eating often enough. Towards the end of pregnancy and in the premenstrual phase, the last bit of the premenstrual phase, you may need to eat little protein snacks every 2 hours. That's fine. Do it because it will stop you binging on the sugar. And get plenty of sunshine. The baby in the womb wants the mum to have plenty of sunshine.
And of course, to eat organic.
Absolutely, 110% to eat organic. Yeah.
Dr. Jenny, this was an incredible conversation. I learned a lot from you today. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. I hope my listeners have a notebook and a pen with them to take notes, or they revisit some of the advice that you shared. But most importantly, pick up Dr. Jenny's 2 books. I have them and I love them and I refer back to them quite often. So thank you for being here and thank you for doing the work that you do. It's so important, and I really hope there are more people like you out there.
There increasingly are. And stand barefoot on the grass. I forgot to say that. And then you're
grounding.
Instantly back in tune with an electromagnetic field of the earth, which is what we evolved with.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing everything.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Alia.
Thank you for listening. Please share with family and friends that you feel could benefit from this episode, and make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a rating and review to support the show. Check out the links below for more information about my guests and where to find them. And make sure you're following me on Instagram at wholesome_practice to learn more about what I do. I appreciate you being here and see you on the next one. This podcast is for educational purposes only and should never replace the advice of your doctor or physician. Always consult a medical professional before making any changes or adding anything new to your diet, lifestyle, or medication protocol.